This is a presentation on the TAT, or the Thematic Apperception Test, presented by Stephanie Meredith at Azusa Pacific University, San Diego. Overview of the presentation. The Thematic Apperception Test, or TAT, is a projective test. The TAT is not a standalone diagnostic tool, and there are many different ways to score the TAT. The TAT is a projective test. It measures interpersonal relationships by assessment of an individual based on what he or she projects, or what an individual's thoughts are in regards to the pictures on the cards. The TAT provides insight to a person's personality, motives, needs for achievement, power, intimacy, and problem-solving abilities. The TAT is used by various different companies, organizations, and governments throughout the world to screen candidates for high-stress occupations. It is also used as a mental health assessment. However, the TAT is not a standalone diagnostic tool. Clinicians will also need additional information, such as clinical interview or additional diagnostic tools to diagnose someone. Scoring: many different ways to score the TAT. Each narrative is carefully recorded and analyzed to uncover underlying drives, emotional, and conflicts. The Thematic Apperception Test was designed by Henry Murray and Christina Morgan at Harvard University. The TAT is a projective test, and it measures underlying dynamics of the personality. It really looks at how individuals view internal conflicts, interests, and motives. Its theoretical orientation is housed in psychoanalysis. The theory of personality that the TAT draws upon is simply called personology. It has also been accepted by various aspects of the human potential movement. The TAT assesses, again, different drives that are underneath a person's personality. The population that the TAT can serve is both children and adults, and there are different cultural variations of the TAT. Administration. So who's qualified to administer and score the TAT? For mental health assessment purposes, a PhD level of education is required. Can be purchased at Pearson Assessments. The kit costs about $87.50, and it includes 31 picture cards and a manual. Pearson states that it needs a level C, or a doctorate degree in psychology. However, if you go to Amazon, you can also purchase the kit for $72.80. Take that kind of with a grain of salt. Item and scale examples. How many items are there for the TAT? The TAT has 31 picture cards in the standard form. Administration of the assessment: typically whoever is giving the assessment to an individual will typically sit in the room next to them, choose approximately 10 of the 31 cards, and provide the individual with a writing prompt, simply stating, write a 200 to 250 word story about the picture that you see in this card. Describe what you see. What are the people thinking and feeling, and how will things turn out in the picture? Excuse me. Cards are separated for males, females, or either sex. A therapist will stay in the room while the client responds, and there are different cards for different cultures. Scales. There's no universal scoring system for the TAT. However, there's a couple examples here. The Defense Mechanism Manual, Social Cognition and Object Relations Scoring, and needs press method. Here's an example of a TAT card. This is the one that I found most interesting because it really would draw upon an individual's complete interpretation of their inner world to project something onto a blank card. That being said, there are hints of what the TAT cards look like in the presentation given as options within the different backdrops of the slides. Scores. The TAT is scored by using introspection technique. The scores tell us underlying things that seem significant. The examiner rereads the stories the second time and finds a repetitive pattern within the stories. The original technique used need press. It's not easy to master and may take 4 to 5 hours to complete for each assessment. Hence why as the administration and evaluation of the TAT has progressed throughout the years, individuals have looked at different ways to score it that would take less time. Here are 2 different scoring examples. One is the analysis sheet for the Bellick TAT, which is blank, and the other one is a Murray-Bellick interpretation. As you can see, very different ways to interpret it, the same pictures. Here's my journal article. The journal article was titled "The Stories Students Tell, TAT, Stories of Bereaved and Non-Bereaved." The authors of this study analyzed students at an evangelical Christian university, both bereaved and non-bereaved students, about grief and death. The article shows that TAT themes of grief, death, coping, and religious coping. The writers of this article found that students constructed their TAT stories with high frequencies of general coping, and frequencies did not differ by bereaved status or gender, but those monitoring death or grief even more mentioned coping. Religious coping themes emerged infrequently. Results differ greatly from prior student at secular universities, suggesting there needs to be further examination of the group. The writers of this article initially started working at a secular college, but did not find enough study participants, so they moved on to an evangelical Christian university and were able to find enough participants in the study, and they found a difference between the secular students and their interpretations of the cards and grief and students at the evangelical college, and suggest that there was a difference in how students cope based on a tendency towards understanding that there is a religious aspect or a God aspect in grief. Define the inner reliability or availability subtype in my article and identify proof. The inner reliability is defined as the context to which 2 or more things or raters agree. This particular study used chi-squares, defined as a test that measures how expectations compare to actual observed data. The reliability subtype evidence identified in the article was inner rater reliability. The study looked at TAT previous study, which found 78 to 80%, which is considered good agreement measures. For this particular study, the inter-rater reliability from the students at the Christian college was 89%, which I think is statistically significant. Additionally, chi-squares were conducted to measure significant differences. Based on the information, students were allowed to assign more than one code to each story. This created an inter-rater reliability of 78 to 80%, which was good agreement. Based on this information, the measure is good. Based on the information provided, a sample recommendation for further study suggests that the group as a whole presents optimistic stories when bereaved students. Stories suggest that they are coping well, but students may actually be having different internal experiences. So that was kind of interesting results. Results alert us to the possibility that these students approach bereavement very differently from others and highlight the need for further exploration. This would be important for clinicians to, when working with bereaved or bereaved students, because they may require different treatment needs. Discussion questions. As a clinician, would you consider asking a client be assessed using a TAT? Why and why not? My thoughts on this were because just the very different ways to score the TAT, and also to thinking about the availability for somebody to purchase it on something like Amazon, and yet it's still very much used in very different types of settings. And so I find it very interesting. And it's kind of a test that has stood the test of time. And so I was just curious if anyone would consider using it, knowing that those things are still there. In summary, TAT is used by professional organizations and mental health. TAT assesses dominant drives, emotions, conflicts, and complexities of our personality. There's not a universal scoring system. Common methods are the Defense Mechanism Manual and Social Cognition and Object Relations way to look at scoring the TAT. And just finally, I guess looking at the TAT, it really does remind me that a picture may be truly worth 1,000 words. And here are my references. Thank you all for your time.